Hello, everybody. Welcome to UGA Sports Rumors versus Facts. I am Blaine Gilmer here with Trent Smallwood, as we always are, but this time on a Wednesday night. Usually on Monday nights, we're coming to you live here on a Wednesday night talking Georgia football recruiting, presented by Turner Wood & Smith Insurance in cooperation with Auto Owners Insurance. Had some people this month already tell me they've switched over to Turner Wood & Smith and Auto Owners, so we appreciate you guys doing that. But Trent, how's it going this evening, man?
Going good.
Just right, get full disclosure. Trent came in like 30 seconds ago. I was like, "All right, Trent, where you at, man? I don't want to fly this thing solo again." That was a lot of talking that night, Trent.
Just on time.
I saved the old vocal cords. You know what I'm saying? But it's the dead period is over with. So that's the first thing that's coming up. Jed posted a note on the UGA Sports Vault earlier today that DeMello Jones, who was on the cover there from Swainsboro, he is playing a basketball game in Athens tonight, and he's going to be there tomorrow visiting Georgia, and he's a guy that right off the bat, Trent, not a bad way if you're Georgia to kind of open up the get back from the dead period and kind of open up visits in March.
Yeah, getting him on campus, and things are about to ramp up. You got some big visits here in the middle of March, and just a bunch of guys we talked to last weekend at Under Armour camp that's planning to visit, whether it be coming up in March or a lot of them coming to that big weekend in June. So just exciting times to get everything back going.
Absolutely. Tell us where you guys are watching from. Go ahead and throw a like in here if you're in here with us already. We're getting cranked up here on a Wednesday night, so I'm sure we'll have some people kind of trickle in as we go throughout here. Already more and more people coming in. We got Tony Wilson here that's asking a question about DeMello there, Trent. Is he projecting as a wide receiver or DB? You see him do everything on the field for Swainsboro.
Yeah, I mean, you ask majority of the time when you see this wide receiver or DB, you got to know who the head coach is, and it oftentimes goes to DB. So I think that he's being brought in as an athlete. They could very well see DB, but he is definitely electric on the offensive side of the ball as well.
I mean, just does so many things really well, and that's something that I think you have to be attracted to if you're a coach on staff at Georgia, an in-state guy like that just shows that explosiveness on both sides of the ball. You got to be excited about it, but I think he'll like you said, he'll probably end up on the defensive side of the ball as things go. Andy Stowe, as always, in here with us from Royston. Tony Wilson that just asked that question. He's from Forest Park in here with us. So got a lot of people in here tuned in with us watching, and we appreciate you guys. Rhett Womack in here. He was the first one in here with us. So appreciate you guys. Like I said, go ahead, like, subscribe, turn on notifications if you haven't already. Trent, obviously, we have to touch on it, because it's some of the biggest news of the day. And we had a recruiting question. We usually wait till we get to questions from the vault and stuff like that. But Dogtail had one early that pertains to the breaking news of Jalen Carter and all that kind of stuff today. He said, how do you guys think that the Jalen news will affect recruiting? I mean, what are your thoughts on that? How could that possibly come into play kind of going forward with Georgia and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't honestly see this as affecting recruiting. I mean, this is just, 19, 20-year-old kids making mistakes. And if you look back on a bunch of mistakes that, you look back on, even when I was in college, I know I made mistakes that you look back on, you're like, dang, what could have been next? So I don't really think it's going to affect recruiting. This is not like and I know it's serious and is, two lives were taken in this, and it's very heartbreaking. But as far as the culture at Georgia, I don't think this changes anything as far as where that goes, and I don't see it affecting recruiting.
The only thing that I think you can do, and I mean, you hope that people wouldn't do it in terms of with the loss of life and stuff like that. But I'm just telling you, college football is just a cutthroat business, and I mean, people may at other schools try to use it in some sort of fashion to recruit, negative recruit against Georgia, like say, hey, they, maybe, they're winning, but do they have control of their guys and all that kind of stuff? Whether that narrative has any legs or not, that kind of thing, irrelevant. But, perception becomes reality at times with some people. And that may be the only thing that I could think could really trick its way into recruiting.
And as good a kid as like Nolan Smith is, and you saw his interview today, and it was very heartfelt and from his heart, and he seemed like a very good kid. And I don't think anybody could tell me that he hasn't gone 85, 90 miles an hour before in a car. And I know it doesn't make what Jalen did right, but these kids make mistakes, and Jalen's a good kid, and hopefully he learns from it. But he made a mistake, and now he's got to face consequences.
Absolutely, but we did want to touch on that because we specifically got a question on it. But Trent, what we're here to talk about tonight is these visits that are coming up, and we got questions that we're going to be touching on later. But with these visits here, we're talking about specifically at the quarterback position, just a parade of some of the top guys in the entire country, but also wanted to get your thoughts. You and Jed attended the Under Armour camp and saw a lot of big-time prospects, in-state guys, and guys also traveling in from Alabama, Tennessee, North Carolina to come to that Atlanta area, even though Jed was upset that it was over in Carrollton. Oh, speaking of Jed, hold on. He's about to join us here. Let me just change our background so old Jed can join us. There we go. We were just talking about how upset you were with Carrollton again, how much you hated that drive.
Believe me, I made my complaints known while we were over there. So,
you filled up the suggestion box.
Yeah, I complained about it all the way there, and I was in the car by myself, so I was just practicing till we got there. But yeah, like you said, it was just the quarterback talent. Trent saw a lot of the offensive line, defensive line one-on-ones. Those two particular groups were just loaded with talent.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what any specifics on that, guys, that stood out to you? You and Trent both, fire away here. Let us know what you saw during that camp.
Yeah, I mean, Trent could speak to it better than I would, but I mean, David Sanders is like, I think his Rivals account lists him at 255. We talked to him, and I think he said he was 260, about 6'7". It's like, okay, how well does that really project as an offensive tackle? Dude is a freak show. Like he was pancaking guys, and he was staying in front of guys. I mean, he's everything you want in an offensive tackle. And if he maintains any strength at all, I mean, I was talking to Roddy about it, and Roddy said, yeah, that's what Broderick Jones looked like at this stage. So, I mean, if he keeps up his strength and keeps adding on pounds, I mean, he's probably just coming out of basketball season, so that's probably a factor as well. But he's just an absolute just a monster at left tackle. And same with Jaquan McCroy. I mean, Trent, you had those videos of him just, laying on a kid and splitting a couple of ribs in half. I mean, he's 6'8", I think, 365, and was it 390 at one point. And he's just a huge guy. And a guy, David Sanders, that 2025 kid, but Jaquan McCroy is a guy Georgia's going after right now and wants him in on official visits. So when you look at how this offensive line class is shaking out, Jaquan McCroy could end up being a big part of it, and he certainly looked the part on Sunday. Yeah, and I could see him as a I definitely don't see him as the left tackle type. I could definitely see him as a guard at the next level, even like a right tackle. He didn't have the best feet, but if he got his hands on you, he was you wouldn't go nowhere. He was strong and had a good base. Yeah, talking about Sanders, he was standing in the middle of the whole offensive line, defensive line group, and this kid looks like he looks like a wide receiver or a tight end standing in there, and it's kind of unreal what he does at how strong he is, how strong his base is, even with the athleticism he has. I watched him run the 40, and we didn't get the times, but I watched him run the 40, and he was like a tight end running. I mean, it literally looked like faster than Darnell Washington, it looked like. So he was very impressive. Justin Green on the defensive line was very impressive. He took reps at defensive end, even slid into defensive tackle. Very impressed with him. He won all 4 reps, even when you slid him in. His
his dad was on hand and let everybody know about it too. And it was pretty neat. Trying to think who else stood out.
Y'all mentioned Daniel Calhoun already, right? In terms of the offensive tackle, like I mean, he's a guy that Georgia's been on forever, and it just seems like, we've been covering the recruiting of this, his recruitment forever. But Jed, any sense of maybe where that process is at and how long that may last?
Yeah, he seemed taller than I remembered. Maybe that's just me, and I hadn't seen him in person in a while. But he told us he's got the official visits lined up for June. It's Georgia, Alabama are the first two, and then I think Tennessee, Texas, maybe vice versa. I think it's a Georgia-Alabama battle. I think it's kind of been shaping up like that the whole time. And like you said, Blaine, Georgia's been on him for so long. This is a recruitment that spans obviously multiple offensive line coaches with Stacey Searles coming in, but he's target number one on the offensive line. And I think Kirby Smart's involved. Stacey Searles obviously is involved. I think it's a little interesting to see how things shake out because a lot of these guys were close with Eddie Gordon, right? And but I think Georgia's right there. It's going to be a Georgia-Alabama battle. I believe he said he wanted to be committed by the start of his senior season sometime in the summer. So these official visits are going to be huge. So we'll see how it shakes out.
No doubt. Now, and the thing about him is I think he could play multiple positions. I think he could do different things. But the deal with him, he moved schools recently. He was he's been at Centennial. Now he's at Walton, I believe, right?
Yep.
Over there. So
Walton's
I don't know.
A pretty big classification, I think, right, Trent? You might know more than I would, but
it's 7A.
Yeah,
it's competition for sure.
Absolutely. So we'll see. We'll see how that all pans out. A lot of times people like to read the tea leaves. Okay, if a guy transfers high schools, how's that pan out for Georgia? Well, really, listen. Unless they're going to IMG, I don't think it matters one way or another because IMG Georgia seems to have a pretty firm grip on down there.
He's going in the home of Dominic Blaylock, so he's a lock.
There you go. You heard it out of the word of Trent Smallwood. What that means, right there. Absolutely. Guys, I appreciate you, everybody tuning in. While you're in here, hit that like, hit the subscribe button if you don't already. This is the fastest growing and the biggest Georgia YouTube channel there is out there, and that's because of you guys. We greatly appreciate all the support. Like we said, as always, presented by Auto Owners Insurance in cooperation with Turner Wood & Smith Insurance. If you want the customer service and with a small town feel, got people that are going to answer the phone, Turner Wood & Smith, but they cover regionally, not just Georgia. I mean, it's all throughout the Southeast, all across the country. They can help you out. Turner Wood & Smith, TWSinsurance.com, and then auto-ownersinsurance.com. Life, home, car, business, they've got you taken care of. So I appreciate those guys helping us out. You mentioned Justin Green earlier, Trent. When it comes to him, a guy out of Alabama, and I'm thinking of Beeman. I'm thinking of Beeman that I wrote up Jed's article on. Beeman's out of Alabama, but both defensive ends. Green out of Lawrenceville. That is, he was just getting after guys, like you said. Those videos that you posted on the Facebook page, and if you don't follow the UGA Sports Facebook page, there's reels, all that kind of stuff going out there that Brent's doing great work, Trent, everybody. But you talk about power, you talk about quickness. He had both of those that he was beating guys with, and it seems like Georgia is got a good bit of momentum in this recruitment right now.
Yeah, he talked about that he wanted to stay close to home. He mentioned Auburn, Georgia. He really that's a big factor. He was even asked about USC, and funny, he said, that's a long ways away. He said, I want to go somewhere that play defense. They don't really play defense; they're just kind of offense school. So, I don't think USC has a chance in this recruitment, but he wants to go somewhere that is a winning program. He wants to go somewhere where the defense is successful, and he wants to be close to home, and that checks a lot of boxes for the University of Georgia there.
Absolutely. I mentioned Beeman from the Birmingham area that, Jed, you talked to. I wrote up the article on him. He's another guy that when you talk about Trey Scott, who's really built up a relationship with Beeman, who's a 4-star guy. Right now he's in that, 255 range. He could go either way, maybe scale up to a kind of hybrid 3 technique type guy if he gains enough weight, or if he could go down. But they're talking about him being more versatile across that defensive line. What was your sense of things when you talked to Jeremiah Beeman?
Yeah, I mean, I think Georgia's right in it. He was there for the championship celebration in January, which, as we saw from last year, those are kind of the guys up at the top of the board that are brought in for a day like that. And we have talked about how the 5 tech, 3 tech edge board is a little murky. And all of a sudden you kind of, it seems like all these guys will come out of nowhere, whether it's Beeman, whether it's Jordan Ross, whether it's, a guy like Christopher Jackson, who Georgia offered not long ago, Jamonte Waller out of Mississippi, who had a good showing at the camp. There's a lot of these guys that Georgia's right in on, and I think these spring visits are going to help sort out, okay, who is at the top of Georgia's board, who has Georgia near the top of their board. Like Trent, you mentioned Justin Green's a guy that I think Georgia's got a lot of momentum with. And we'll see, but there's certainly, it went from a bit of a murky situation out there, and obviously guys like Edric Houston are still involved as well, to all of a sudden there's a whole lot of guys on that board. It's gonna be interesting to see how it all shakes out and who kind of rises to the top as the real priority targets in this thing.
Yeah, no doubt. And listen, the defensive line and even the offensive line, we saw offers going out today for offensive linemen in the class of 2024. So, by no means is this class done in the trenches by a long way. There's only 10, commits in the class. So they've got a long way to go. And it's really going to get cranked up with these, as you mentioned, Jed, for these March visits where they get to see. That's one thing a lot of the guys expressed excitement about. They're excited to see, whether it's the Saturday scrimmages or whether it's just a practice day. They're excited to see Trey Scott, Stacy Searles, all the different coaches, whoever their position coach is, actually interact with the guys on the field where there's no pretending. They're coaching. They're out there and they're seeing how they would be treated if they were a Georgia Bulldog. So I think that's going to be an impactful time. And with having said that, it couldn't be any more impactful than some of these high profile. And when I say high profile, I mean of the absolute highest profile quarterback recruits that are coming in. You're talking about Julian Lewis in the class of 2026 that'll be in there on March 16th. You follow that up with Ryan Puglisi, Georgia commit, who should be in there around the 17th. Dylan Raiola, who's going to be there the 18th and also probably stay and be there for another day as well. And then you talk about Ryan Montgomery, a class of 2025 guy that's going to be there April 4th. All of these guys, I think, are really going to be looking forward to seeing how Mike Bobo runs things as not only the offensive coordinator, Trent, but also coaching quarterbacks there on the field.
Yeah, I think they're interested in seeing the offense change, the language that's used. Will it be similar to the way it was under Monken, or is Bobo kind of going to transition to his language in the offense? I think you're going to see a lot of the same, to be honest. I think you've seen Todd Monken built this system, and Kirby Smart don't want to change it now. I mean,
that's already been communicated from the guys I've talked to. They've already said, listen, the quarterback recruits, they're telling us the terminology is going to stay pretty much the same. I'm sure that Bobo will change a thing here or there, like tweak something, maybe simplify some things, something like that. But he, in large part, they're going to keep that terminology the same, and the system should be the same by all accounts. From what these recruits are being told, it's just a different guy holding that, that Waffle House menu of plays that they seem to hold in front of their face on TV, But continue, man. I just wanted to interject.
Yeah, I mean the terminology might be the same, but it might be a little bit more redneckish coming out because Bobo's from the South, But it's I don't think nothing's going to change. I'll be interested. I was always a Bobo. I was always behind Bobo. I always thought he had great offenses. Yeah, there was. I know he's drawn a lot of criticism from the third and Bobos or the draws and stuff like that. But when you run those things and it works, and I know Munkin did several times and it worked on 3rd and 8, and you run a draw, and I mean sometimes it does, but I think Bobo will be good. I think Bobo's never played with this kind of defense, and this caliber of just athletes overall, I think Bobo will be successful, and I think you'll see that trend carrying over. And he's been really good recruiting quarterbacks in the past, and I don't expect that to change either. So it'll be interesting seeing all that talent come through mid-March with the quarterbacks.
For sure. Andy Stoas has Kirby and Bobo hired another offensive analyst to help coach the quarterbacks, the position Bobo had last year. I know that talking to the recruits and the guys that they've been involved with before, they all mention, whether it's Raiola, Julian Lewis, Ryan Montgomery, all of these guys and people close to him, Puglisi, they all mention the name Gummy Van Gorder. They call him Coach Gummy. Montgomery Van Gorder, who's Brian Van Gorder's son, that was the defensive coordinator there when Mark Richt was there. He's been around that program not only as a child, but now as a coach for a while, and been a part of all these championships that they've won. And I think from all indication that these recruits are being told, and I'm sure Roddy will be able to put something out on the dog vent sooner rather than later. But I think he's going to kind of slide into that role and get a little bit more responsibility there. And he's a guy that has a lot of ties in the state, being a Beaufort alumni, and having played around here, in the North Hall community around Gainesville as well. So he's got a lot of connections to high school coaches in the state and stuff like that. So I think that'll be kind of a natural transition there, Jed, with from what these guys are telling me. The recruits are saying that they talk to Van Gorder a lot.
Yeah, it makes sense for everybody to slide up a rung, right? I mean, Bobo goes up to offensive coordinator, and Van Gorder's a guy that could slide into that analyst role. Not to mention he'd be, like the question said, a perfect guy to be working with those quarterbacks. It'll be interesting to see if they look at any outside names. I mean, obviously everyone knows what Alabama's done, bringing in whether it's Lane Kiffin, Dave Sarkisian. Yeah, I mean, there's all kind of guys that Alabama's brought in. So it'll be curious to see now that Georgia's kind of established that success and obviously has won national championships, if they get a guy like that, or even just is involved with some names like that. So it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, I definitely think if they want to stay in-house, Montgomery Van Gorder is about as perfect of a candidate as you could have.
Well, and another thing, I mean, he played quarterback at Notre Dame, I mean, before, he was a walk-on, played at Notre Dame, and then he transferred to Youngstown State and actually played his last year of eligibility there. So, that could be a possibility there. And
analysts play a big role in today's game. I mean, you're just looking back, who was it, 2017 when they made the run that was working with Jake Fromm all the time? Did he go with, what was his name? Name slips my mind. I believe he went with Mel Tucker to Michigan State, offensive coordinator. Monken gave Bobo a lot of credit for the offense last year. Just with game planning, things
Buster
that
Faulkner did a lot of stuff during his time at Georgia.
Just overall game planning and just an extra set of eyes that have been there and been able to call it. And a lot of these, like we talked about last week, a lot of these analysts get big time jobs. Buster Faulkner at Georgia Tech, and it'll continue. Maybe Gummy will get one too.
Absolutely. So we'll see what happens there, but that would be a name I would look out for that. All right, Jed, we're gonna go ahead and kick off questions here. And as always, when we post asking for questions, it's typically a battle. Didn't get one from Pine Tree today, but it's typically a battle between Pine Tree and Darth Janus on who's going to get the first question in. This week it was Darth Janus, so we got our first one from him.
I love a good Star Wars name because I'm watching first episode of The Mandalorian after this. Any of our recruits have commitment timelines in the near future? Thanks, and go Dogs from Dallas, Texas.
All right. Of guys that you've talked to, anybody come to mind? I know Aaron Butler is close to a decision, right, Jed? I think that's coming up in June when he's going to make the announcement.
Yeah, he said July. That might have been moved up. I've got to check with him. I mean, Jake Merklinger is a guy who, when we talked to him the other day, it sounded like he wanted to have things wrapped up by the summer, and that's obviously a guy that Georgia's looking at a quarterback and is bringing in another guy, like you said, Blaine is visiting in March. As far as guys that have got set timelines, I mean, like we've said before, I think whether it's guys that have set timelines or not, I think you might see that next wave of commitments kind of in May and June after guys take these spring visits and really kind of evaluate things. Then you can shut things down going into the summer. So, I mean, off the top of my head, I don't really think of a lot of guys who have things set.
I know Malachi Tolliver, offensive lineman from Cartersville. He told me that originally he was, thinking about maybe, wait and see him, but he'd kind of like to get it done before his senior year. And I think that's the sentiment with a lot of these guys now. And like it or not, with NIL and all this kind of stuff, I'm not saying every recruit is going to get a absorbent amount of NIL or things like that, but it's like anything else, right? That what drives the economy? Scarcity, right? Because there's a limited amount of what you're trying to make out there, and there's a certain NIL pool for certain schools and things like that, right? So you either got to jump on an offer or somebody else might. So I think that's going to, as we get deeper into the NIL era, Trent, I think you're going to see guys say, okay, well, I'm not waiting around. I'm going to go ahead and get this going. So I think you could see a flurry of recruitments from several guys across all the schools during the summer.
Yeah, and I think you've already, you kind of seen that trend go that way because, mostly everybody's taking summer officials. There's a few that take the fall officials, or spring officials. Mostly everybody takes spring officials. Mostly everybody's signing in December. You're not seeing much going on in February. I mean, Deuce Robinson was really the big name, and he didn't even sign anywhere. So there's just I think that's trending in that direction. You're going to see mostly everybody I've talked to said I plan on announcing in July or the 1st of August. And, Justin Green, Timothy Lewis. I mean, there's a bunch of those guys that just they want it done for their senior year, but they want to take their visits first. And I think you're going to see them take 3 or 4 official visits, maybe save one in case something happens down the road. But go ahead and announce a commitment in July. So you'll see a lot of commitments in June, July, maybe going into the beginning of August.
Jed, you talked to Mike Matthews recently. I think Mike Matthews falls in that category.
Yeah, he said, like a lot of guys, thinking start of the season. If it needs to go into the season a little bit, then so be it. Daniel Calhoun was a guy that said that. And then, some of these other guys, like I mentioned Christopher Jackson earlier, some of these guys who are emerging as targets whose recruitments have just blown up, they've got a lot of visits to take to kind of make up for some lost time. So I wouldn't expect to see them decide until later in the summer. So, there are some guys, like when we spoke with Cam Davis at the Under Armour camp the other day, he said he wants to take fall officials and see, obviously he's committed to Florida State, but Georgia's trying to flip him. And you wouldn't expect quarterbacks, whether it's Dylan Raiola or Jake Merklinger, to go all the way to the end just because that's the nature of being a quarterback. But
I was about to say, I think when it comes to Raiola, I think he hasn't firmly set his official visit yet. I know that a lot of guys, like we talked to Peyton Woodyard on the episode a couple episodes ago, and he mentioned he's coming June 2nd through 4th. Those two talk every day. They're really good friends. I wouldn't be surprised if they showed up on the same visit. But it's kind of a debate there of, okay, does Georgia try to get him in for the first big weekend like they did last year with a lot of guys, or do they try to be the very last visit for Dylan Raiola? So we'll see what happens there. But once the summer is done, those officials that he's going to take in the summer, I don't expect it to drag on much longer than that. I mean, I don't think this will be a necessarily, into like October type deal and see what happens during the season. I think he'll want to wherever he's going, and I do think Georgia has really, really good standing there right now, that I think he'll want to get in there, Trent, and start building a class around him where he's wanting to go.
You mean he's still visiting in March?
He is 100% visiting in March. We never
Double
wavered on
confirming with you.
we never wavered on that for here on UGAsports.com. Some people may have, but we didn't, because when you're talking to the people involved, you just go with what they tell you. So that's how it goes. But no, I'm intrigued to see how all this quarterback stuff goes out, because Georgia didn't sign one in 2023. Okay, didn't go in the transfer portal. They're happy with the 3 that they have. I believe that one of the guys will be gone after the spring. So you're realistically probably going into the season with 2 scholarship quarterbacks, and then I guess Jackson Muschamp or somebody as the 3 in that scenario, unless they dip into the portal after the spring. If one of them lets them know early enough to have another scholarship arm in there. And then they're going to get 2 in 2024, and who knows what happens in 2025. If you get those 2, maybe it's a deal where they sit pat in 25 and move on all in 26 on Julian Lewis. I do know this: Julian Lewis has been to Georgia more times than he's been anywhere else, and he's about to come again and get a whole kind of day to himself, pretty much. Him and Mike Bobo and Montgomery Van Gorder and all these guys that are involved in that recruitment there. And Georgia, Trent, I can't remember, even with guys like Lawrence and Watson that came through the state of Georgia, that people criticize how Georgia handled it. I cannot remember Georgia being as all in and as heavily pursuing a quarterback as early and as vigorously as they are Julian Lewis in 2026.
Yeah, and to be honest, Bobo didn't go I guess go after Cam Newton. He was late on Deshaun Watson. He came in late in his junior year and offered Deshaun, or not really offered, but started the pursuit of Deshaun, and it was too late by that point. But Juju's been recruited since 8th grade, maybe, probably before that. This relationship's been building for a while, and it's Georgia's. You ask Juju Lewis who he's fond of on the staff, he could probably name every one of them, because every one of them's probably been in contact with him. And I don't think the Monken to Bobo transition is going to affect this either. There's a long ways to go with him, and was talking about staff stability. I think. Schumann's a guy that could go, but I think you're looking at Bobo. He might be done moving forward at this point. This might be a job that he sits in for as many years that he's successful at Georgia. So,
especially with his son there, mean, his son's there, and it's
so just having that. The way Bobo can recruit, and maybe the stability of the fact. They've been in it for a long time for Juju, and I don't see Georgia going away in this recruitment. And not saying Georgia's going to win out their recruitment, but Georgia's been in it for a long, long time, and they've invested a lot of time in him. And he's visited, and he's invested that time back.
Absolutely, it's going to be intriguing to handle. All right, here we go. We got to get to some of these questions here. All right, Jed, I'm going to read this one off because it's referring to your article. PA Dog 610 says, I read Jed's article. Matthews will visit in the spring, as we just pointed out. Do Georgia have a legitimate shot with him? Does it go deeper than football? Is there NIL big time involved in this? What other schools are primary contenders? So, Jed, what's your thoughts from the greediest of guys here? He's not happy with Yazid Haynes coming from his own state. He wants PA Dog. He's getting greedy. He wants to get Mike Matthews in there as well. So what's your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, I mean, first, Mike Matthews is really dang good. I mean, we saw him the other day, and he had, we posted on Facebook, like you said, he made a ridiculous one-handed catch, and this was after playing a basketball game the night before. And he could have easily, mailed it in and just showed up and done interviews, or not showed up at all, but he went out there and competed. I think Georgia's got a legitimate shot. I mean, I wouldn't say Georgia's the favorite. I don't know that I would necessarily call anyone the favorite right now. I mean, there's Georgia, there's Clemson, there's Tennessee, there's USC. Notre Dame was one of the first real schools to get in. So that connection will be a factor as long as Marcus Freeman and that staff is hanging around. I don't know. I mean, I don't think NIL will be like the deciding factor. I mean, will Georgia get him? Maybe. Will they lose him? Maybe. But I don't think if Mike Matthews goes okay, Clemson is kind of in that same boat as Georgia. They're not throwing NIL bags all over the place, right? And and I posted this on the Vault the other day. We all know what Tennessee has supposedly done with Nico Iamaleava and the rumors around USC as well. So I don't know. I mean, I don't think NIL is going to be the deciding factor. I mean, Mike Matthews said what all the other kids say, right? That the money, you don't worry about the money will come, whatever. Everyone says that. Some mean it more than others. But I mean, I think Georgia's got a real shot, and NIL, I'm sure, will be discussed at some point down the road. But in my opinion, I don't think NIL will be the reason Georgia loses Mike Matthews if it does indeed.
Listen, you just have to operate under the assumption now that everybody is going to be looking at NIL in some
right.
form or capacity. Because listen, you have to know your worth, and what dictates your worth? The market, right? And the market is booming right now for these guys. So I think it would be foolish of any of us, here we are adults, we work for a living, right? And if people are willing to dangle money in front of us, it's not like we're not going to think about it. So that's how that goes there when it comes to the NIL world. But I agree, there's got to be other stuff to it. And primary contenders, would you say Clemson and Tennessee are kind of the main battle there?
Yeah, USC. I mean, again, Notre Dame was, Mike is a guy who he's a 5-star now, but at this time last year, he was still, his recruitment was really just beginning to take off. And Notre Dame was one of those schools that showed belief in him early. So I think that connection is going to mean something to him.
One other thing, Jed, why you had that on the topic, but I thought it was funny the other day when you were speaking with Sanders' dad, and he said he had a group of media around him, and his dad said, well, but he didn't have nobody around him this time last year, and we're talking about the number one player in the country. So
yeah. I mean, Mike is. I mean, I remember it was at I think it was either the Atlanta Rivals camp or the 5-Star Challenge or whatever, and he was. Georgia, I don't even know what Georgia had offered him yet at the time. And I was like, that's why I keep coming back to this Notre Dame, because he kept gushing about Notre Dame then. And like you said, we're not even a year later, and he's a 5-star. He's the number 7 player in the country. I mean, it's amazing how these things change. So, I mean, like you said, some of these 25 guys will kind of be in the same position next year of guys that have just blown up. So, he's like, we were just talking about Juju Lewis. Mike Matthews is not that guy like Juju Lewis, who's just been recruited since he was in 7th or 8th grade. So, but to answer the question, I think Georgia's got a shot. I think there are a lot of other good receiver targets on the board along with him. And we'll see how it goes. It does seem like Georgia, he played kind of coy about it. He said, yeah, maybe. When I asked him if Georgia would get an official, I took that to mean Georgia's in a good shot. So, we'll see. We'll see how things go this spring. And so we'll be back this spring before taking an official this summer as well.
Absolutely. We've got one here from KSDJ 1869, Jed.
Yeah, this is the Blaine Gilmer special. Does it feel like Nebraska is gaining as much steam in Dylan Raiola's recruitment as the media with a capital M is saying? And could they really be a legit consideration? I don't know why the top quarterback would want to go there.
Yeah, KSDJ 1869 put in a lot more than that. I had to condense it down to make it fit onto the screen here, but it was like he was like basically saying that this isn't the mid 90s. What's the interest in Nebraska and things like that? Well, his dad did play there. His uncle is on staff, so there's ties there and things like that. But listen. Yes, there's a certain affinity that you have for a school where your dad's in the Ring of Honor and all that kind of stuff, and there's so much family history there. You got baby pictures of Dylan Raiola in Nebraska gear and things like that. But at the same time, you got to realize those guys won 3 games last year, and there would have to be an immense amount of belief in what Rule is going to do with that program and turning things around. And yes, I know the college track record, but I think one thing that really, really matters to the Raiolas is how people's program prepares for the pros, because Dom Raiola was, of course, the center for the Detroit Lions for, almost 10 years. And he was in there. He was Matt Stafford's center. So I think how you have done things in the pros, and listen, Matt Rule didn't have a great run with the Panthers, actually got kind of laughed out of the league. So I think that could be a detriment to them. Georgia is obviously preparing guys really well for the pro level and what Monken was able to establish there. And then they've got a good relationship with Bobo. So long story short, I think that people kind of ran with some propaganda that got thrown out there from maybe inside the Nebraska building to some writers out there in the media, and kind of ran with it a little bit. But I don't see it being some kind of late groundswell of momentum. I still think Georgia's in really good spot here. I would argue that Southern Cal actually has a little bit more momentum than Nebraska at the moment, Trent.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. From everything that I've heard, just from sources have indicated that USC might be a bigger threat than Nebraska at this time to Georgia, because there's a lot of uncertainty at Nebraska. You're not getting that uncertainty at USC on the offense side of the ball. You're not getting that uncertainty at Georgia, period, these days. So, Dylan Raiola is the number one player in the country. He wants to go to a place where, he's going to win. And, of course, he probably believes he can win anywhere. He's the best quarterback in the country. But at the same time, you got to look at where a program is. This could be, he has the chance to be a top pick anywhere he goes, but that could set him back some, going to a program that's not as successful or not as capable. So I think he's looking at the whole picture, and I would say that Georgia and USC are right at the top, and Nebraska's in it, of course, because of family ties. But at the end of the day, I think they're going to, just from everything that we've heard about them and everything with you talking to them, Blaine. I think they're going to, be smart about this choice. Look at the whole picture outside of the family relationships and everything, just as a total football decision.
For sure. Staying on the quarterback theme, FJ McCrary Jr., he says, rank these quarterbacks. What he's trying to do, he's trying to put one of these questions on that makes you sweat a little bit in the recruitment, because we know that Jed does all the rankings for the whole country, so he's accustomed to this, but he's wanting us to rank them here. Jed, if you don't know, is solely responsible for all of Rivals rankings nationwide.
So this would be easy for Jed.
This would be
knock it out,
for Jed. But go ahead, Jed.
Let's see. So I'm assuming this is like right now. I'll go.
Yeah, it's hard to do because some of these guys are in different classes.
Right.
Like Juju, are we talking about Juju when he's the same age as Dylan Raiola, or Juju now,
I'll do this as how I think the Georgia staff is prioritizing these guys over the next couple of years. I'll go Raiola 1, probably Juju 2, Montgomery 3. Antoine Hill 4, but he told us at the Rivals or at the Under Armour camp that he hadn't been talking to Georgia a whole lot. And then Aaron Nolan, Georgia has never really kind of been on the radar with him. So, I think Antoine Hill is a good player. I think maybe Ryan Montgomery has maybe separated himself a little bit on the board, just from what we've heard and Antoine, the conversation with Antoine the other day. So. But yeah, like you said, Blaine, it's hard not to rank a guy like Juju Lewis high when he's about to start or just finished his freshman season in high school, and he's already been recruited by the 2-time national champions for a couple of years.
I think Juju and Raiola would be 1A, 1B personally.
Yeah.
And they're two totally different guys, right? Because Raiola brings a physicality to his game in terms of just being big and strong and being able to shed off tackles and still move around a little bit, big arm, things like that. Julian, the thing that is so good about Julian Lewis is that he sees windows and anticipates routes coming open before they are, and that's rare in the high school level at all, much less when you're a freshman. in high school. And I think the biggest thing he can do, that the most impressive thing as quarterback, is be able to layer throws, like kind of those intermediate throws behind linebackers, in front of safeties, things like that. Just tremendous touch, able to still have enough zip on it to get it in there when he needs to. So, with Joey King over there at Carrollton, he's got such a bright future. It'd be hard to separate those two. And then I would go Montgomery, and then some kind of order after that of Nolan and Hill, just like you, Jed. I think that's kind of how we go. Trent, you agree with how all those would stack up?
Yeah, and I would even leave it. We're leaving out a quarterback here. A quarterback commit. I would put Pugs right there with Montgomery, probably right behind the first two. I think Pugs is very good.
Listen, Puglisi is here's what people don't realize. Okay, if I was Jed and I was ranking these guys all in the country, wherever Dylan Raiola is, I would put Puglisi like just a couple spots behind him. Like, that's how good I think Ryan Puglisi is. Ryan Puglisi has a lot of, and people are going to, freak out when I say this, he has a lot of Josh Allen type qualities about him. Okay. A guy who can run, has good size, and has a just howitzer attached to the right side of his body. His film going from his sophomore year to his junior year, this is a guy who comes in, Trent, he's playing shortstop, and all of a sudden they'll bring him in almost like in Little League, where you bring the shortstop in to close out the game, and he's pumping it in there low to mid 90s. I mean, he can just sling the pill on the mound. So I'm telling you, he's got a really strong arm, and that's a great point, Trent. I'd put him up there as well.
Yeah. Definitely. If you can come away with a quarterback class of Raiola and Puglisi in the same class, would just be insane. And what Jed's doing, not having them as the top two players in the country, is just asinine.
Send your hate tweets to, I believe it's at Jed May _. So there you go. Absolutely. Jar 52.
Plenty of hate tweets already.
Let's blast through these last few. What position group will be considered the strongest coming in this recruiting class? So when it's all said and done, class of 2024, let's take quarterback out, because like you said, if they land Raiola and Puglisi, that's almost not even fair. So excluding quarterback, what position group would you say would be the strongest?
I think there's a good chance receiver could be, right? Because you're already out to a good start with Sokovie White and Nikar, and then just with the sheer amount of top guys you've got left, whether it's
Aaron
Butler, Jeremiah Smith,
Zion Reagans.
They're trying to stay in it with JoJo Trader. Jalewis Solomon is a guy no one even talks about, and he's a really good player, and he's not even that high on the board just because there's a ton of higher priority targets. Amari Jefferson is a guy that the staff is really high on, has got a good connection with Will Muschamp. There's a lot of guys at that receiver position. So even if you land a couple of those guys to go with the two you've already got, that'd be a really strong, really, really strong group of receivers that they could bring in.
Trent, what do you think?
I think wide receiver and also I think defensive back. Just looking at the defensive back they got right now, and then with the possibility to land a guy like KJ Bolden and to add to it. It's insane. How he's recruited, or how Georgia as a whole has recruited at defensive back in the past 3 years, and to possibly get this class this year, it's just insane.
Listen, the amount of talent that Kirby Smart has, accumulated in the secondary during his time, I think it's like a violation of the Geneva Convention. Okay, because it is absolutely gross the amount of talent that he has brought in. Ellis Robinson in this class, Peyton Woodyard, the number one safety. You got Jalen Hayward, who is in the class. They're right in the thick of things with KJ Bolden. And if I had to, put it down on it today, I'd say, KJ Bolden, I really like his, chances to end up at Georgia at this point. I really do think that they're heavily involved there. I know Bolden and Raiola are talking a lot. Heck, Peyton Woodyard is talking to both of those guys about, hey, maybe they get, place and all live together, all that kind of stuff. So, it's there's a lot going on, but defensive back is ridiculous.
the days of having Aaron Davis and those type of guys out there are over.
No doubt. But speaking of Buford, R Hall 55 says, what did Georgia not like about Montrez Walker at Buford? He just committed to Michigan. Georgia needs that Buford pipeline. I agree that Georgia, it would be nice for them to have, but I mean, they have won back-to-back national championships. I don't know that you can argue that they need the Buford pipeline. I think they would like to have it. Anybody have any specifics on, I just know that Georgia was in no way from the people I've talked to, they just weren't pursuing him. It's not that they didn't like him. They weren't as quick to jump on and kind of latch onto him as some of these other programs and weren't as enamored.
Yeah, if y'all want a fun behind-the-scenes story, at the Rivals camp last year, I saw Montrez Walker on the list, and I was like, oh, man, Georgia's pursuing that guy. And I told Trent, I was like, hey, Trent, try to grab an interview with Montrez Walker over there real quick. And Trent came back. He's like, yeah, man, he said Schumann hadn't talked to him in a long time. And I was thinking of Zayden Walker from Schley County, who obviously Georgia is pursuing very hard. So yeah, I clearly know nothing, which makes it make no sense why I'm doing these rankings. But like you said, Georgia's never really in it. I know Montrez, he visited.
It was somebody with a Walker, whether Montrez, Herschel,
he visited. I can't remember. Montrez visited. I can't remember if it was in like November or if it was in January. But obviously he's teammates with Jaden Perlotti, who's committed, so it could have been one of those kind of things. But yeah, like you said, but Georgia was just never really pursued him for one reason or another.
All right, and then we're gonna wrap up with a follow up by R Hall 55. How many silent commits does Georgia have right now?
All of them.
18.
I will tell you the real number that I've been told by multiple sources and that I feel really good about is 3 to 4 guys that have already told the staff this is where I want to be, and that there's either a specific date that they have in mind, or that there's just a couple minor things that they're looking into. But I think that you could safely say there's 3 to 4 guys that are silently committed.
Is that 24 kids playing?
24 kids. Yep.
24 silent commits. You heard it here first.
2024. I think there's three to 4 guys that I would feel confident in saying, and I think one of them probably pops before the month of June, and then the rest of them will probably come June, July, 1st of August, right in there, just based on dates that are important to them and things like that. That maybe they just want to. They'd say, hey, Georgia, you're my option. You're where I want to go, but I do want to go and check out this one place. And Georgia's not going to be like Clemson and say, well, if you want to commit here, you can't visit anywhere else and all that kind of stuff. So, Georgia's confident enough, I think, in who they are as a program and what they offered to say, hey, take all the visits you want, and we'll see. So,
are you talking about Arch Manning?
Yeah, Arch Manning, silently committed, even though he's on Texas roster. That's for sure. That's it. Absolutely. All right. So appreciate all you guys tuning in. Hit that like button. It really helps us out. Just go ahead and hit it. You see, we're presented by Turner Wood & Smith Insurance, Auto Owners Insurance. Their links are in the description and scrolling across the bottom there. We appreciate you guys tuning in every week. We'll be back to Monday next week, so a quick turnaround for us. But without anything else, guys, just make sure you're following along on the on UGAsports.com. And for Jed May and Trent Smallwood, I am Blaine Gilmer, and we'll catch you next time on UGA Sports Rumors versus Facts.